By now, you should be more than comfortable with moving the shapes of the major scale around the fingerboard, and hopefully you've managed to play through all 12 of the major scales. Now, I appreciate that in order to learn the note names of all of those major scales is a big task, and even more so if you're having to refer to each of the accidentals as both sharp and flat notes. So, in this session, I'd like to introduce you to a concept that will simplify the way you think of notes in a major scale and lay the building blocks for you to move on and better understand musical notation in the future.
In the wonderful world of music theory, there are certain rules that we have to obey when it comes to naming the notes within a scale and whether we refer to them as sharp or flat. These rules are all to do with something musicians call key signatures. Key signatures exist because they tell the musician which notes to either flatten or sharpen. Certain key signatures will only use and refer to any accidentals as either sharp or flat notes. These symbols on this piece of music tell the musician to play certain notes as sharp notes, and because they have practiced and understand about key signatures, this is easy for them to do so. For example, take an E major scale, and we may think of the third note as an A flat. But if the key signature tells us only to use sharps, then we'd be forced into referring to it as a G sharp. Remember, it's the same note, but it's the key signature that's dictating whether we refer to it as a sharp or a flat note.
We'll definitely be getting into key signatures a little more in future sessions, and this information will be expanded upon. But for now, I just want you to be aware of their existence. Think of them as musical versions of your times tables in maths. They dictate to us certain rules that we have to adhere to, and once understood, we can then use them to help solve musical puzzles.
For now though, here are some rules to get you thinking about and using the appropriate key signature when referring to the notes contained within the major scales you've learnt so far. The first rule is beautifully simple, but fundamentally important. Each individual major scale is in itself a key signature. So, for example, the C major scale is in the key of C major, and the E major scale is in the key of E major. In other words, the root note of any major scale is its key. If you think about it though, this is really true, as all of the notes of a major scale lead your ear instinctively back to the root note. Okay, the second rule. If you start a major scale on a flat note, refer to any accidentals contained within the scale as flat notes. So, for example, here's an E flat major scale. E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, and E flat. And sticking to the rule, I've named all of the accidentals by only using flat notes. Right then, let's take another major scale and use these rules. Okay, here's our root note, an A flat on the 4th fret of the E string, and going up through the notes of an A flat major scale, making sure we refer to any accidentals as flat notes, we'd have A flat, the second note is B flat, next to C, the 4th note is a D flat, then an E flat, then F, the 7th note is a G, and then back to A flat, but up an octave. And finally, linking back to our first rule, it's stated that the root of any major scale is also its key signature. So, the A flat major scale must be in the key signature of A flat major. Now, this second rule also applies if you play an F major scale, so please take this on board and make sure you refer to any accidental in this scale as a flat note. Okay, so here's the third rule. If you start any major scale from a sharp note, also refer to any accidentals in that scale as sharp notes as well. Now be careful though, this rule comes with an exception, which is that it also applies to the major scales of B major, E major, A major, D major, and G major. Okay, here's a little saying that you can use to really help you remember these other scales that also use sharp notes. Bootsy grooves and everyone dances. So, using this new rule, if we were to start from an F sharp and name the notes contained within an F sharp major scale, we'd have F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, F, and then back to the F sharp. Now, as if all of this new information wasn't confusing enough on its own, I'm just going to throw something else into the mix. In strict music theory, the seventh note of the F sharp major scale, which is the note of F, should actually be thought of as an E sharp. At this stage in your development, I don't want you to worry too much about this small detail, and in reality the naming of notes such as E sharp, which is basically the same as an F, B sharp, which is the same as a C, F flat, which hopefully you understand is the same note as an E, and C flat, which is the same as a B, are really only used when we write music down. And it's far more common to come across these notes in musical notation, as it's here that we have to adhere to the rules of music theory and pay particular attention to our key signatures.
Now, I can appreciate this all seems rather confusing, but please just try and exercise these new rules when it comes to the naming of notes within the major scales you've played so far. Just by making use of this new information will make you so much more aware of the different key signatures, and from here you'll be much better equipped to understand and tackle musical challenges in the future. Okay, on a lighter note, I'd just like to finish with something called the musician's theory of relativity. I'll see you next time.